Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Live around the world on the internet at MichaelDukesShow.com. And across the state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station and or FM translator. Good morning and welcome to Thursday edition of the Michael Dukes Show. Hello. Hello, my friends. How are you this morning? Are you ready to face the day? It's just another beautiful day in paradise. And we are ready to go. Jam-packed show this morning. We are going to cover a bit of headlines and discussions and some things here in the first segment this morning. And then joining us here in just about 15 minutes, we're going to be talking with Steven Greenhut from Reason Magazine, who is going to be joining. I'm on a bit of an education kick. We've been talking a lot about education, and I think I've finally decided to take the gloves off mentally and just kind of go after this hammer and tong. He wrote a piece here this week talking about, I guess it was Saturday, Sunday, talking about the investment in education in California and how, despite the fact that they are spending enormous amounts of money on education in California, that the test scores there continue to plummet, just absolutely cratering there in California after spending 30. They had a deficit spend this last year, $32 billion in education, in a deficit. It's just, it is absolutely astonishing how much they're spending on education in California. A grand total, the revised budget showed a total of $128.3 billion. That's with a B. $128.3 billion to education, spending, well over what Alaska is spending on their students. And yet at the same time, the test results, not great, man. Not great. Of course, the answer, is that they need to have more money. They're lagging. They say the California Teachers Union's complaining that the per student funding lags behind other states. Well, like what? Like one or two other states? The amount that they're spending is just... Anyway, we're going to talk with Steven Greenhut about this and get his take on it. And where does he think it goes from here, especially with the discussion about national enrollment dropping? That's not just an Alaskan problem. That's a problem nationwide. So we're going to talk about that as well. In hour two, Kathy McCollum is going to be joining us. She is a candidate for MatSu School Board. She is going to be coming on and talking with us about her candidacy, which, of course, we had the walkout this last week and everything else, and you heard my commentary yesterday about that and more. It's just astonishing that more and more the fact that the fact that we've got hundreds of thousands of dollars being poured into little tiny local podunk school board races around the country, but especially here in Alaska, is interesting. I guess interesting to say the least. So we'll talk with Kathy about her candidacy and her campaign and the upcoming vote on Tuesday. We're just around the corner here, just 5 days away from this all coming to fruition, and be back. Donna just corrected me. Alaska spends more per student than California does, which I thought we spent just over 20,000, but apparently Donna's going to hit me with some math here in a minute, and we'll tell you exactly how much Alaska spends per student. I thought it was just north of 20,000, and the California beat us at 24. But Donna will help me out. She'll give me the actual number. I haven't seen an updated number in a while, so I very well am probably wrong on that. All right. But before we get there, let's start talking about some of the stories around the state. Let's see. We could talk about the seafood industry and the harvesting jobs declining. That there's this big showdown in Congress over the military holds for confirmations of military officers. There's over 400 military officers who have not gotten their advancement and confirmation in Congress because of Tommy Tuberville, who is the Republican from Alabama. I don't know if you heard about that. Not that really, I guess, again, it's national stuff. It doesn't really matter in the long run. I guess we'll start over here. Because we can. For the second time in a week, Alaska state troopers have been involved in a deadly shooting up in the interior. The first shooting we talked about on Monday or on Tuesday. That was after a man was seen carrying a rifle outside of the motel rooms at Three Bears in Tok. When troopers arrived, they confronted the man, and he, I guess, a firefight ensued, and he was killed on the scene. It turned out to be a resident from Northway. No real motivation as to why that happened. The second one happened yesterday afternoon on the Parks Highway near Healy. Which is, for those of you who don't know, Healy's about 2 hours south of Fairbanks. The troopers began pursuing the man who was driving a pickup truck and ignored commands to stop. While heading northbound towards Fairbanks, he shot at the law enforcement. This sounds like this is like one of those Keystone Cop things where they shoot back out the window while they're being chased. He apparently shot at law enforcement officers following him. And in turn, the troopers and responding law enforcement returned fire. After coming to a stop, the officers and the driver continued exchanging gunfire, during which time the driver of the pickup shot was given the lead pill and ended. The troopers had the highway closed for over 3 hours and removed vehicles from the highway. They reopened the highway last night at about 5 p.m. But this is, I mean, you can't make this stuff up. I mean, it's just the world seems to become wilder and woollier by the minute when this kind of stuff happens. And then you have this story. Now, remember the story back of the Delta Junction guy that was sentenced to spend some time in prison after he threatened Murkowski and Dan Sullivan? Do you remember that? I mean, that was kind of weird because it just seemed like there was some instability there. Well, now a man on the Kenai is facing federal charges after authorities said that he sent a message to a U.S. senator threatening to kidnap and harm her. According to the affidavit, Arthur Charles Graham, 46, of Kenai, was remanded in the Anchorage Correctional Complex. While the lawmaker he's accused of threatening is not named, U.S. Senator Lisa Murkowski is the only woman holding the position in Alaska. They would not confirm or deny whether she was the one that received the threat, but according to the affidavit written by a special agent with the Capitol Police, according to the ADN, congressional staffer members reported receiving the threatening message online and on October the 2nd. The message had been sent from Graham, who provided a Kenai address and an Alaska phone number. I mean, at some point you got to be like, okay, is this mental health, or is this just a cry for? Because apparently he said he was facing, in the message, he said he was facing financial hardship and would soon be homeless. He then proceeded in the message to threaten the senator. So, I mean, was this a cry for help, or was this just a way to get 3 hots in a cot for the next couple years? I can't really tell. I mean, you're sending a message on the congressional website, you're giving your name, your address, your phone number, and then you say, I'm going to hunt you down, cut the flesh off your body, and wear your skin like clothes. I mean, it sounds like he's quoting The Silence of the Lambs and Wild, Buffalo Bill, right? I mean, that's what it sounds like. But and then, of course, he got interviewed by the FBI and he admitted to sending the email. I mean, it just seems to me like this is, I don't know. I mean, you got to take this kind of stuff. In this day and age, you got to kind of take this stuff seriously. Not that, I mean, if he's almost homeless and facing financial hardship, it's not like he could fly out of state and go do this in Washington, D.C. But at the same time, you're like, not a criminal mastermind, right? Let me give you my name and my phone number and then threaten to skin you and wear your skin like clothes. I mean, it's... Mental illness is real in this country, my friends. There's always got to be some other choice out there, but it seems like the worst part was this wasn't the first time that this guy has been accused of sending threatening messages. Back in 2019 and 2020, Frank Parlato, who is a New York-based journalist, was doing coverage on the sex cult, NXIVM. I don't remember if you remember that whole thing. It was kind of a fringe deal. But anyway, he published several online posts and had been a published journalist about it. And apparently Graham at that point had sent him a bunch of messages and made baseless accusations about Alaskans that he thought were involved in the cult, which again sound cuckoo, and then targeted this journalist when he failed to follow up on those baseless accusations. And so Parlato had shared the information with the Kenai police and everything else, but no charges were ever filed. So sounds like this guy's been going downhill for a while. And people ask me why I go forth armed. I mean, people say, why would you need why would you need a gun? Well, I'm glad. I'm glad that this is what I was, because people like that are out there. That is some crazy stuff. I mean, again, maybe he was just looking for 3 hots in a cot for the next 2 or 3 years because he was going to be homeless. But that's about it. Again, it seems like the world is getting weirder and weirder as we proceed ahead. All right, we are jumping ahead. We're expecting to hear from Steven Greenhut from Reason Magazine. He should be up next. And then Kathy McCollum in the final segment of the program, final hour of the program this morning. We'll be back with more. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio.
If you missed the show, you can listen to it on your time with Dukes On Demand. Oh, and it's free. Like America used to be. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Okay, we are in the commercial break right now. As we continue to go forward, I see that Steven Greenhut just popped into the green room. He's down there enjoying my virtual coffee and my virtual donuts in the virtual green room, of which I have taken all the calories out, so he has no guilt this morning. We're going to get to him here in just a hot second. Let me go back through, make sure I didn't miss anything important in the comments this morning, other than the correction from Donna, who did correct me on the per pupil spend in Alaska, more than California was. David then said, because she corrected me and said Alaska does spend more than California on a per pupil basis, that David says per student spending depends upon the source. And I still don't see an answer. So, David, if you want to hit me with that number, because like I said, the last one that I saw was just slightly over $20,000 per student. And Steven Greenhut's reporting that it was 24 in California. So if you want to tell me from all sources what the new number is, I'd love to hear it. I'm curious as to where we fall. But the fact that they spend $128 billion on education is, staggering. On that. All right. Anything else? I'm ironically entertained by the fact that young people in the state are saying that there's no employment to be had. Meanwhile, Skin Suit Guy had apparently managed to keep something locked down until this point. No, look, I mean, anybody that that unironically says there's just nothing to do in this state has not even bothered to step outside their door at this point. Steven says, Steven Greenhut just hit me with a private message, says, depends if they include federal or local bond spending as well. So see, we're gonna get some good stuff from him. Let's go check him out, shall we? He's sitting over there. He's probably run out of donuts by now. Let's go over there and check it out. Steven Greenhut joins us this morning from Reason Magazine to talk about all the good stuff. Come on, what's going on here? I can see his video in the green room, but I can't see him. Good morning. Are you there?
Yes. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I can see. Did you turn your video off for some reason?
No,
I can see
my video's on. Let me. There's the stop cam. Now the cam's on. And
it's weird. It's weird. I can see your image in the green room slide, but I can't see it up here on the main screen.
Yeah,
that's weird, man.
I don't know. And my computer, the video works fine on it, so I don't know what's going on. I'm sorry.
Let me remove you. Let me remove you and put you back on the screen here again. We'll try it again here and see if we can get you back up on the stage. No, that's okay. All right. Well, we don't necessarily have to have it here unless you want to try and rejoin again and click the link again. We could do that. That'd be the last choice.
Yeah,
otherwise,
I can do that. Let me do that. I'll be right back.
All right. Thanks so much. All right. Steven Greenhut on the thing. All right. I was born into darkness. You merely adopted it. I was born into... anyway. All right. Let's get... I'm going to add him to the stage right now because he's there. Hey, look at that.
Hey, that really helps, right?
Exactly. There's a face there. That's okay. Yeah. Anthony just...
bald guy sitting in...
Here's what Anthony
in his office.
Steven is all like, I was born into darkness. You were merely adopting it. He's like, you're calling out from the dark room. All right, Steven. Well, we are about 50 seconds out from returning to the radio. I appreciate you coming on board, and thank you for your quick response on that. It took a couple days for Chris Mitchell from Reason to get back to me. And I'm glad you did. This is a great article. We've been hot and heavy on education on this program for about the last 2 months. And because I'm about had it up to here with some of the fallacies and lies and stuff we're hearing. So it'll be interesting. They're trying right now to increase education spend in this state to a tremendous amount, claiming that we haven't increased education spending when we just, anyway, it's a whole story.
Well, you guys, you're in Anchorage, right? Or
I'm outside of Anchorage, but this show broadcasts across the whole state, and so we're covering the whole state here. We're 10 seconds out. Hold the line. We're going to jump into it. Here we go. Steven Greenhut, Reason Magazine. Like and share, like and follow. Do all the YouTube-y things and Facebook things. Here we go. Let's do it.
Public enema number one. Oh, wait, sorry. Enemy. Public enemy number one, which makes more sense. On the other hand, he's a little bit of a pain in the Michael Duke Show.
Those are total lies. I am a perfect angel. Absolutely a perfect angel. I would never be a pain in anything. Welcome back to the program, The Michael Duke Show, broadcasting across the state of Alaska on this your favorite radio station and or FM translator. We're continuing this morning now. Our guest, speaking with him for the first time, although I've been following his work for quite a while, Steven Greenhut, who writes on occasion for Reason Magazine, joins us this morning to talk about California and test scores and everything else. He is the regional director, Western Region Director for the R Street Institute. And worked for the Tribune as well. His latest article, entitled Test Scores Are Plummeting Despite California Spending Wildly on Education, caught my attention, and he joins us now to discuss. Again, publishing for Reason occasionally. I guess I should say he's with Reason, but that's where most of my exposure comes from. So, Steven, I guess, tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, what the R Street Institute does, and things like that. And then we'll jump deep down into the article and get into some facts and some details here. Good morning, and let's get started.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I'm Western Director for R Street Institute. We're a free market think tank. I'm based in Sacramento. I write for a variety of publications, including the Southern California News Group. So, so education is, just one of the normal topics. And I found it kind of frustrating that our state doesn't ever seem to look at outcomes. We only look at how much we spend, as if the more you spend is the mark of accomplishing anything, right?
That's the winning metric. As long as we're spending a lot, we're winning. It doesn't matter what the outcome is. As long as we're spending, we're winning.
Right. And that was, that's kind of, I had done some home remodeling, and I was just kind of making the comparison that, I don't look at how much I spend. I look at how many projects I get for the money, and whether it improves things, not whether I emptied the bank account and didn't get what I wanted, right? It's the end result. That's what normal people do.
Exactly. No, it's interesting to see. We've been on this topic, and I've been talking about this topic in education for going on 20 years here on the program. But that is the consistent problem. The problem is always, the answer is always, oh, we've got a problem in educational outcomes. What we need is more money. And it doesn't matter how much money we throw at it. The answer, even as the outcomes continue to decline or remain stagnant or whatever, is more money. It just becomes the mantra that's the issue. Nobody is willing to admit that there's something fundamentally flawed in the current educational system across the country. I mean, this is a problem that's national in scope, although it drills down into the local communities and at the state levels. The problem is that it is national in scope in that there's something fundamentally wrong, and nobody seems to be willing to admit that. The answer is always, well, if we had enough money, we could make it work. How much is enough?
Right. I mean, it's like one of the teacher union presidents famously or possibly said, when asked what it is, what do you ultimately want? And his answer was more. And that's just it's always more. And it's driven, in California, probably less so in Alaska, but in California, it's driven by the teachers union, very powerful, perhaps the most powerful interest group in the state capitol. And they don't allow. Now, California did have a pretty aggressive charter school program starting years ago that's been rather successful. Our recent governor has been reducing the ability of charters to expand. And charters, of course, are publicly funded schools. They're not true competition, but they have been an out for especially poor students in some of the absolute worst performing schools in the state, because it's basically impossible to fire a teacher. I mean, we had something, the LA Times had done a series about rubber rooms and how they have these, they call them rubber rooms, these classrooms where teachers who've been deemed unfit to teach just sit there and spend their days doing nothing. Now, in the private sector, if we had teachers, and a lot of them were accused of, pretty bad behavior, I don't think many private sector companies would continue to exist if they took their worst performers and stuck them in a room and paid them their full salary and benefits.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, I just don't. Yeah, exactly. And oh, my poor, poor summer child, Steven Greenhut. If you think that the teachers' unions do not influence what happens in Alaska, man. Now,
I didn't
granted,
say that. I just didn't. I couldn't
to the-
imagine that they'd be worse than they are here in
yeah,
California.
to the level of California. I mean, let's go back, and your article doesn't cover this, but let's go back for just a moment to the just post, the not post, but mid-pandemic, when it was 2021. The pandemic's been there for a year, everything else, and schools are opening up across the country, and the California Teachers Union says we're not going to open, not for safety, not for anything else, but until we get social justice, until we get equitable spread of monetary wealth. And I mean, they had had stuff that had nothing to do with
That's right.
child education. And they were basically holding the entire state of California hostage over these things. It really, I think for the first time, a lot of people's eyes were opened into the fact that it really wasn't all about the kids, as they kept telling you. It was more about politics, power, and social justice, right?
Well, right. I wrote quite a few editorials with
Oh, yeah.
different unions at the time. Yeah. Oh, of course, Michael. We want to reopen, but we just can't until these following demands are met. And it was all, or not all of it, but a lot of it was just had nothing whatsoever to do with the pandemic. And I remember especially the LA Unified School District was resisting. The unions were UTLA were resisting reopenings, and not to mention that when they switched to at-home learning, the public schools they just fumbled it. They couldn't handle it. The
Right.
kind of where the charter schools and the private schools just they just rolled with it, as bad
Right.
as the whole situation was, but they were at least able to provide some level of teaching, where the public schools, I mean, you had teachers who they couldn't even get their computers to work. Not that I should talk, I couldn't get mine to work here in the morning, but it just was a complete, absolute mess. And then we find out that, big shock, many California students are just disappearing, since the absentee rates are incredibly high, almost a third in some school districts, and that the modest educational performance gains that we've gotten over the last few years have all been rolled back since COVID. Big
Right.
shock, right?
Oh, yeah, and they were rolled back several years. In fact, they said some studies across the country and in some specific states, they've rolled back like 6 or 7 years worth of educational gains in a single year. And as you said, statistically, school districts, regular brick and mortar school districts, were having a horrible time with the whole COVID distance education and everything else. The adaptable districts, the homeschooling components, the charter schools, the private schools, they all just went like, okay. And they continued to make it out. And I think that was an eye-opening thing. And speaking of eye-opening and people coming around, you quote a state senator, a Democrat in California, who even said, I think, even some of them are coming around to the fact that, again, saying what I just said, that basically there's something fundamentally broken here and we've got to fix it. Senator Stephen Glazer and his comments on what's. Can you hear me, Stephen?
I'll correct you. I'll say, oh yeah, maybe not some of them, but one of them anyway, right? I mean, so it's
exactly.
There just haven't been enough to bring up that point, at least not publicly. I mean, some of them will say these things privately, but not publicly. So yeah, it's now Alaska. I mean, my daughter used to live in Eagle River, and I remember that Alaska has an interesting kind of homeschooling approach, right? The way they fund homeschooling, which isn't that kind of a promising model? I don't know much about it. I just
well, let me break it down for you for just a second and educate you. My youngest child just graduated last year, my youngest of 5, and we homeschooled all 5 of our children, and we utilized a program that was put out by the Galena City School District called IDEA, the Interior Distance Education Association. And Alaska has a very unique model for homeschooling. They allow school districts to basically enroll students from anywhere in the state to receive a small portion of state funding. And it is a fraction. It's like 20%, 25% of what brick and mortar students would get. To do their education. They have contact teachers for each student that parents can call or have the kids help with and everything else. And it's an amazing system. And in fact, it has exploded in fact, we were the first, our oldest daughter was in the first group of students when the whole thing was founded. And again, my fifth child just graduated. So we're a 20-year span. We've been utilizing that program, and it is amazing. And in fact, it spawned a whole bunch of copycat type programs around the state, which, I mean, we're all happy with. But their growth, all of these different organizations, has just exploded, and especially post-pandemic. That was the thing that was interesting to me, that when the pandemic happened and they shut down all the schools and they started to try to do this distance thing, and the school districts just fumbled the ball, these other organizations who have been doing remote and distance and telephone and, Zoom meeting helps with kids and everything else, that was no different for them. And their enrollment just exploded. And like I said, I think many parents' eyes were opened about how they've been sold a bill of goods, right, Stephen? I mean, they've been told, how many parents have been told for years, oh, homeschooling is hard. That's a huge commitment, and it's so hard, and you should, leave it to the professionals. And all of a sudden, most people found out, because they had to, they discovered it wasn't as hard as they thought it was.
Yeah, it's amazing. And our state, under the latest governor, has been trying to shut down or vastly limit online charters, so the ones that know how to do these things the best, they're the ones they're pushing out. So our previous governor, Jerry Brown, was extremely good on charter schools and these sorts of things, but the latest governor is not.
Well, it's protectionism, right? I mean, you basically have politicos who are out there essentially protecting the education industrial complex, which is what it is. You've got professionals in education in the unions and everything else. They're driving the bus. It's not the outcomes of the students that's driving the bus. It is, what do these people who are in power and who receive money and who are benefiting from the educational expenditures and systems, they're the ones that's what matters to them, is what happens there, not necessarily the outcome of the students.
Right. And they, and this constant push for additional local bond measures. The parents always get they get a dilemma, right? So they'll realize that they're not getting the education that they want, and they know that nothing's going to change the system entirely. So they're asked to spend more money, and often they'll vote for it, right? They'll figure, well, what are you going to do? It's and then they get, they just get more spending without any outcomes. I mean, I just anecdotally, driving by our local school, we had a perfectly nice looking school building, and the bond was passed, and now we have a palatial school building. But I wonder to what degree the educational outcomes have improved because of that very architecturally lovely building that we now have in the middle of a farm field.
Right. Well, we've seen that around. It's the same thing has happened here in Alaska. We had one community that had a building it was a school building that they were still paying previous bonds on. That was still adequate. It needed some updates. It needed some capital improvements, and they voted instead to tear it down, to put a new bond in and build a whole new school while they were still paying bonds on the building that they just demolished. It becomes, again, a jobs program, not just for the educational industry, but also for the construction industry. I mean, it's a hand in glove thing of all this crony capitalism and everything else going on. That's what we're seeing at every level, where they're working hand in glove together. And again, the people who are hurt the most by this are the children.
Right. I've covered school bonds where, like one in Orange County, where they promise X number, I forget the exact number, but all these new schools and all these new classrooms. And then the voters pass the bond, and then they immediately hand out a project labor agreement, which eliminates non-union labor from the construction process. So that immediately reduces by around 25% the amount of construction that they're going to get. And then they end up, after the end of a few years, of producing a portion of what they promised on the bond measure. So then, of course, I guess you need a new bond measure.
Yeah, again, it is the self-licking ice cream cone.
So,
It is a self-reinforcing feedback loop of pain, essentially, when it comes down to it. Steven Greenhut is our guest. He is with the R Street Institute, and we're going to continue to talk with him about California and their spending and how there's a lot of similarities. I mean, not just in Alaska, but across the country. This is happening. California is like the big culprit, but it seems like every state around the country is basically facing the same thing, where the teachers unions are influencing the education industry is basically making some amazing inroads into the educational systems and consuming a ton of money with very little results. We're going to be back more with Steven Greenhut in just a moment. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio.
Running on 100% pure beard power. Oh, also some coffee. We dip our beard in coffee.
Ha, nice beard.
The Michael Duke Show.
Continuing now with Steven Greenhut here on the program as we go into the commercial break. Your daughter used to live in Eagle River. And so did you get a chance to come up and visit her up here while she was up here?
It was lovely. I mean, it's a little colder than I'm used to, but it was very beautiful. People were wonderful. It was great. I like it up there.
Yeah, no, it's it's a great place to live, and we've got there's a lot of things going for us. Of course, we don't have the California sunshine and warm weather, but we got a lot of other things that are still pretty good. And at least we're not living in a state where they're basically milking the teat so hard that everybody's leaving. I guess is the best part of that right now. But we have a lot of the same problems, Stephen. A lot of the same problems, and this educational thing is just another one. It'd be fascinating for you to look into what's happened here in the state. We're in this last legislative cycle. The number one priority from the Democratic minority in the House and the coalition, moderate Democratic coalition in the Senate was, we need to spend more on education because, and here was the narrative, we haven't increased education spending in the last, 7 years or 10 years or whatever it was. And of course, they were just talking about the base student allocation, which is the formula-driven component. It had gone up 4%, but because they said it wasn't keeping up with inflation, they basically ran with the narrative of, well, you haven't increased education spend at all. And the newspapers, with no accurate thought, with no analytical, they didn't even look into it. When in fact, we've increased education spending by almost 30% in the last 15 years. Because they don't talk about the forward funding or the outside the thing or all these other things that are going on. But people buy into that. And that's the thing. People buy into it. The pandemic did open some eyes, but I think this is, again, a common mantra around the country.
Yeah, and a lot of times, and people in my business, the newspaper business, very rarely look deeply at the numbers, right? They don't look at where has that money gone to. The increase, often it goes to administration. Some of that is driven by the federal government, but a lot of that, very little of that money will, in some cases, ever make it to the classroom. And we had an eye-opening court case. It's been a few years now, called the Vergara decision. It was down in LA County, and the judge tossed our system of union work protections, tenure, seniority, and pointed out that it protects a percentage of basically incompetent teachers. And
right.
It included the numbers of what that means, how many students are are harmed by these. I forget the term they use, but teachers who really ought not to be teaching. And of course, it was kind of shocking and eye-opening. But then, the higher courts ended up expectedly overturning that decision. But once in a while, a little flower blooms and people get a view, right? And COVID's another case where a lot of parents say, hey, wow, our schools really aren't as good as we thought. A colleague of mine, a friend from the Pacific Research Institute, I remember he wrote a book, Lance Izumi, he wrote a book called Not as Good as You Think. And he focused on the good schools, not on the terrible ones, because most people are like their view of their schools. They think their schools are good and everyone else's schools are bad. It's kind of how they think about their members of Congress. They hate Congress. Congress is a total clown show, but I like my member. He stands up for us. So same thing with the school. But anyway, he found that the good middle class schools really aren't as good as we think, right? And the point I made in the column was if we use that money in California, $24,000 a student a year, at $600,000 a classroom a year, could you imagine what a private company could do with that kind of money? I mean, it would be, it would really reimagine the education system rather than, Gavin Newsom always talks about reimagining the education system. Well, we wouldn't have to imagine it anymore. It would be dramatically changed, right?
Yeah, this is a prime example of the inefficiency of government. We know government. I mean, historically, you just look back at the track record. They are horribly inefficient with many of these things. And as you said, most of this money is going into overhead. It's going into teachers or to administrators and janitors and classrooms and buildings and maintenance and all this other kind of stuff. Just think, $24,000 per student in a classroom of 20 or 25. I mean, show me a private school that wouldn't do extraordinarily well for your student at $20,000 or $24,000 per student every year. Tell me that the outcomes wouldn't change on that. It's truly astonishing. All right, that's the 30-second warning. We're getting ready to rejoin the radio here. Steven Greenhut is our guest with the R Street Institute, a free market. He also writes for a variety of papers. I follow him on Reason. That's why I said from Reason. But I follow him there. You could check this out, and we'll get his website before we go too far along here. Let's jump back into it. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Like, share, follow. Here we go. That's it.
The Michael Duke Show. Not your daddy. Wait, sorry. Not your daddy? Ooh, not your daddy's talk radio. Whew. I was scared for a second. Thought we were going down. Here's Michael Dukes and the show.
Yep. Not your daddy's talk radio, the Michael Duke Show, broadcasting live across the state of Alaska and this favorite radio station and or FM translator, also out on the internet at michaeldukeshow.com, where you'll find links to Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, where we simulcast the show, and the audio-only live stream. Our guest this morning, Steven Greenhut with the R Street Institute, which is a free market think tank. He also writes for a variety of papers in the western half of the U.S. and also is a contributor to Reason magazine, where I picked up his latest article entitled "Test Scores Are Plummeting Despite California Spending Wildly on Education." And boy, howdy, are they spending wildly, Stephen. I saw the quote in here, the total revised budget on education for this last year in California, $128.3 billion for education, which translates from all sources to about $24,000 per student. And you and I were just talking about in a classroom of, 20, 25 kids, it's $600,000 a year. Show me a private school that couldn't do well with a student who had $20,000 to $24,000 worth of tuition every year and couldn't get it done. And that's an amazing number, and it just keeps going up, right?
Yeah, I mean, imagine even half of that, right? I mean, it's just we would have excellent education. Parents would be able to choose the type of schools that best serve their kids. Because, it's kind of a factory model, our current school system. And that number, people, the teachers unions, they pitch a lower number, but I don't believe they're including all the many different sources of funding from the feds and from the from local bonds. But one thing nobody includes is the unfunded pension liabilities. The California State Teachers Retirement System, last time I checked, was like 70% funded. So that extra 30% ultimately would be borne by taxpayers. That's the unfunded pension liability, the amount of money that's owed to pay for the rather generous pensions that teachers receive based on a formula rather than, a 401k. So basically the whole system, it's just designed to serve the people who work for the system. It sounds really cynical, but that is how it's designed. That's who writes the laws, right? And I remember I was writing about city governments, and one city manager said that California cities are basically pension providers that provide a few public services on the side. And maybe if we start looking at the school system that way, they're essentially employment operations and construction operations that provide a little education on the side. And,
and we see the cost of personnel, of course, is always the largest cost sector of any business or government, and especially in government pensions. Here in Alaska, we had a defined benefits plan like California did that was, it was up underwater to the tune of $12 billion in a state with 600,000 people. $12 billion. They finally changed from the defined benefits to a defined contributions plan, a 401k style plan, and we've whittled it down. But they did that. That was almost 20 years ago that they made the change, and we're still $7 billion in the hole on that pension plan. So, I can't imagine how they're ever going to get out from underneath that burden. It's astonishing when you think about the dollars that are involved.
It's the senior debt. So if everything collapses, they get paid first. And if you look at their websites like Transparent California that show just show the kind of pay and pensions that our public employees receive, it really boggles your mind. Especially in the law enforcement area, you've got, when you include the pensions, you've got police sergeants making $600,000-$700,000 a year, and not just a handful of them. 4, 5, 600,000. It's crazy. And the teachers aren't earning that kind of money, but still the goal should be the outcome of the service, not how much we pay the people who provide it.
Well, and that seems to be the theme of your article. The theme of your article essentially is, if I want to distill it down, is we're never facing or looking at the outcomes. We're always looking at the journey. Who's getting paid on the journey? Who's getting taken care of? All this other kind of stuff. The outcome, if this was a manufacturing business, would be, the widget, the product. What is the product? Is the product good? Is it standard? Is it subpar? Is it excellent? They're never looking at the outcome of the product, because right now the product is subpar. You talk about the testing scores in California, where it's 35% of low-income students met the English language standards, and only 21% met the math proficiency standards. We're facing the same in Alaska. We're in 49th out of 50th, 48th and 49th out of 50th on math and reading. And yet we spend almost as much as California, if not a little more, according to some of the folks here that are correcting me in the chat room. But nobody's looking at the outcomes. And then you mentioned, which I think is very important, because I think this is going to factor into the future. You mentioned absenteeism and the declining enrollment. So talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, since COVID, absentee rates have gone through the roof. So they don't even know where these students are. They're just not even coming to school anymore, right? So, and then our enrollments are, we're an aging population. As you mentioned earlier, a lot of people are leaving California. We're not a growing state anymore, which is a little bit shocking. I got here like 25 years ago, and endless growth in population was just assumed. And it is, by the way, it's still a beautiful state. So I'm not one of these folks who's bashing on my home state and encouraging people to leave, but people are leaving for less beautiful states and places without palm trees and nice weather. So anyway, like our Congressman Tom McClintock he talk about, if people think their future is better in the Nevada desert than along the San Diego coast, that tells you something about public policy.
Right.
So,
well, you don't have to bash on your state, Stephen. The state is doing enough on its own to drive people away to, Idaho, Montana, California, Texas. I mean, those, those are all happening.
I don't blame people for leaving either. And I'm just saying there's a certain element of people who are, California is horrible. It isn't a nightmare. It's just a beautiful state that is being driven. It's driving people away because of its horrendous public policy. And in basically any area that we want to discuss. But on education, we're having our enrollments are declining. Our population's aging. Fewer immigrants are coming here now. So they're still getting more money in a climate where you're getting fewer customers. So you compared it to a widget factory. If it was a widget factory, it would have moved to Mexico or Thailand or shut down a long time ago. But the fact is that we have fewer customers, and yet the push still is for more money, right?
Right. Well, and this is what's going to continue because of a variety of factors, including the declining birth rate, as you said, the aging population, the boomer generation retiring, and, this new thing, they're not having kids as much, plus the pandemic and people seeing that there were other ideas. There's been an explosion. There was a 27% growth in homeschooling and other alternative forms of education post-COVID. Those things, I think, are going to continue to accelerate, and you're just going to see that decline continue. So the question is, in the last 2 minutes here, what's going to happen to these school systems and the education industry when they don't have enough students to maintain what they have right now, and they continue to ask for more? What's eventually going to happen to those that are, kids that are left remaining?
That's a good question. I quoted a report from academia looking at bemoaning the situation of schools that still have to pay for their infrastructure, for their buildings, for their teachers, as the student population dwindles. Well, why do we need those schools, right? I mean, that's the issue. Shouldn't be maintaining a stucco building and keeping the full staff size when you don't have customers. So we're going to have to come up with a new system if we're serious about educating students properly and not just maintaining the ongoing system as it was designed. And I don't know what's going to spark that, but I have seen, some, you don't know. I mean, things could change, and we just have to change our thinking.
You just heard a large scream out of California when he said that we might have to close some of our schools because there's not enough students. And you just heard a scream somewhere in the background when he said that. Steven Greenhut, the R Street Institute, also, again, contributor for Reason Magazine and more. Steven, thanks for coming on board this morning. I appreciate you being part of it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Hold the line just a second here. Folks, we're out of time. Kathy McCollum is our guest. Up next, The Michael Duke Show. Well, I wanted to ask Steve one more question, but he decided to leave. Okay, well, we appreciate him being on the program. All right, folks, let me go back over here. I'm trying to figure out what Jeannie's trying to say here. He said that you've got tons of law enforcement pulling down multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars a year in retirement. Jeannie says, but teachers don't have hundreds of hours of expensive training, uniforms, firearms, health insurance, etc. I, with all due respect, Jeannie, I would disagree. They do have hundreds of hours of expensive training that they have to, ongoing education, continuing ed. They do have to have, had to do stuff for the, if you're pulling down $100,000 a year in retirement, that's probably not the norm for most people. And he said it was people that were pulling down $300,000 or $400,000 a year in retirement. But I mean, I guess I digress. Anthony has a counterpoint for his whole argument about how California is so beautiful. And Anthony says, sure, California is a beautiful state. Who doesn't love rolling homeless camps, poop on the sidewalks with some of the worst taxation imaginable? It's a freaking paradise, I tell you. Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's where I want to live right after I go to hell. I mean, anyway, we're going to jump in here. Let's see. Thank you, Steve. You aren't as scary as I thought, said Brian. Apparently, Brian thought Steve was going to be scary. Going back over here. Donna, I'm sorry I didn't see your comment. I would have asked him if I had a chance here after the break, but he hung up. I lived in Sacramento in 2004. I wouldn't want to live there now because of government and crime. Why does Steven stay? I mean, of course, you know my position on this whole thing. My position essentially is, if I can't have my firearms and be able to protect myself, why would I bother to be anywhere? Nobody, as far as I'm concerned, anybody that wants to live in the People's Republic of California may need a checkup from the neck up. You know what I mean? You got to have a little bit of freedom and free thought and everything. That's not encouraged in California. All right. We are about 3.5 minutes here from rejoining and starting hour 2 of the program. I see that Kathy McCollum is in my green room right now. She is enjoying my virtual coffee and my virtual donuts. Just leave me one with sprinkles on it, Kathy. That's all I'm saying. Just leave the one. But there's no calories in any of those donuts. You have zero guilt. If you want to eat the rest of the plate, you feel free to do so. Looking through any other comments here that were made that were good. The education system is like a gas station. You could make it as big as you want, add hundreds of pumps and all the accoutrements. But if the tanks underground are full of dirty gas, nothing that pulls off that beautiful lot is ever going to run right. Wow, that's strangely poetic, Anthony, and 100% accurate. 100% accurate. No matter how much set dressing you put on the schools or how beautiful you make them or everything else, if people continue to fail to look at the outcomes of the students, it doesn't matter how palatial or how beautiful the building is. It doesn't matter how good they made the kids feel about themselves or about anything else. If the kids can't read a freaking book when they leave without help, if they can't do a simple math problem without help, if 60% of those that graduate have to have remedial education to be able to take a basic 100 level math class in college, we're failing. We're failing. I mean, I don't know how to put it any other way. Fail. Reason number 637 why I homeschooled all 5 of my kids. All right. Comments have to be good now. What? Let's do it. Here we go. Let's go check in with Kathy. I'm sorry. I kind of filibustered there for a minute. Let's go check in with Kathy. We'll check her audio, make sure everything's good, make sure her camera works this morning, like Steven's. Let's go over here and see what she has to say. Hey, look, there she is right there. Kathy McCollum, our guest, joins us this morning. Good morning, Kathy. How are you?
Good morning. I'm wonderful. How are you today?
I cannot complain. Nobody listens anyway, so what does it matter? Anyway, welcome to the program, and thanks for joining us. You ready to dive into this madness on the show here?
I'm ready. Okay.
Good. Well, I imagine you're probably ready for this madness to be over by Tuesday. We'll see what happens. It's been a hot mess. I was saying earlier in the program a couple of weeks ago, I said, I think over my 25-year career on radio, I've probably interviewed 2, maybe 3 school board members prior to this election cycle, because again, they're just the smallest little, that really. But boy, I tell you, this cycle, I've already interviewed more school board candidates this year than I think I have in the previous 25 years, because all of a sudden these races seem to matter. We'll talk about that here. I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but yeah. I appreciate you coming on board. So I'm going to pop you back in the green room, have another donut, and we'll be back with you here in just a hot second. Kathy McCollum, our guest, the Michael Duke Show. Thank you, MD, for having Kathy on the show. Well, again, I think thank you, or Lynn McCabe called me yesterday and got this set up because I had left a message or sent an email from Kathy's website and hadn't heard back from anybody. So somebody finally they made the connection. So I appreciate that. So it's a good stuff. All right, here we go. We're jumping into it. The Michael Duke Show, Common Sense Radio. Hour 2 is dead ahead. Like, share, follow. Do it now. I command it. Or ask politely. Let's do it. Here we go.
Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Yep, across the world on the interwebs at michaeldukeshow.com, where you'll find links to the audio-only live stream, links to the podcast, which is available on iTunes, Google Play, CastBox, Stitcher, and, of course, Spotify, and all the links to our social media sites where we simulcast the show, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. And, of course, broadcasting live across the state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station and or FM translator. Hello and good morning, my friends. Welcome to Hour 2 of the program. You just missed Steven Greenhut from the R Street Institute and a contributor to Reason Magazine. He was talking about what California is spending on education, which makes us look like pikers in many ways, and how they're still miserably failing, which again has been the theme of the program here for the last couple months as we've been talking about this. Education is a huge component of every government in the country. Alaska is no different. It is the largest. It is the largest cost sector in most communities and a big one in the state. And we've got to find a way to get a control of this thing. And of course, one of the we talk about being grassroots on this program a lot, and one of the lowest parts of that grassroots, working from the ground up, is our local school boards. And school boards seem to be the new point of focus for many organizations, specifically teachers unions and other progressive institutions, who are now pouring tens of thousands of dollars into local school board. A school board race used to cost you a couple $1,000s to run for a school board race. Now it's $10, $20, $30, $40, $50,000 to run for a school board seat. And you got to wonder why. I mean, I don't have to wonder why because I know, but it should make you wonder what's going on. So we've been focusing on that. We talked to Ole Larson last week here down in the MatSu. One of the other incumbents who seems to be under continuing fire and pressure is Kathy McCollum. And Kathy has been kind enough to join us this morning to discuss these issues. And so we bring her on the program and say good morning to her right now. Good morning, Kathy. How are you?
Good morning. I'm great. Thanks for having me here today.
Well, thanks for coming on board. Like I said during the break to you, I mean, I can count on 3 fingers probably the number of school board candidates prior to this year that I've ever interviewed on the show, because generally it's kind of a non-confrontational thing, and it just really didn't have a whole huge impact. But now with kind of the social engineering and things that are going on in school districts around the country, all of a sudden, these have become a hot button, hot focused little area where you have small communities in Alaska, Fairbanks, Kenai, and now MatSu, where outside special interests are pouring tens of thousands of dollars into these races to try and influence the young mindfuls of mush, as Rush Limbaugh used to say, that are in the school to try and foster these. And it has been a very interesting thing to watch. But before we go any further, I want to talk a little bit about you for folks who don't know you. Give me a little bit of your background, who you are, where you came from, what made you decide to jump into this madness that is politics, although this used to not be quite that bad a deal. But, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, well, I've lived in the MatSu Valley for 34 years. My husband and I moved here from Idaho in 1989, and I am a school teacher, or was a school teacher. I'm retired. I taught 1 year in Idaho, and my husband came home one day and said, "What do you think of Alaska?" And like normal Alaskans, we said, "Let's do it." We just jumped in our little vehicle and drove to Alaska, and I landed here in the MatSu Valley with no real intention of this is where we were going to stay, but one of my relatives lived here. So we stayed, and I got a job at Palmer Middle School. It was Palmer Junior High at the time. And uh, realized pretty quickly that junior high was not where I wanted to be. So I went back to where I had been in Idaho teaching first grade. So I taught first grade for most of my 31 years in education, working on teaching kids to read, which is where it's all about. You know, everything starts there. And when I retired, I got pretty active in local politics. You know, I am the president of the MatSu Republican Women's Club. I'm the chair of my District 26, and had never considered running for school board. It just wasn't something that was on my agenda. And at the time, one of the school board members was not going to run again, and it seemed like there was nobody ready to run for that seat. So I was encouraged to jump in, and I did, and wow, did I jump in. So
Yeah, no, it's interesting to watch. You know, I'm often reminded of the quote that, you know, government is what happens to you when you're not paying attention.
exactly.
You know, and so a lot of people, they ignore the smaller things, you know, I mean, things down to like road service area commissioners or, you know, or school board members or things like that, because they, oh, that's just, you know, that'll take care. I'm more focused on the national issues or something else, you know, and they're not paying attention to what's going on in their own backyard. That's how you have places like, you know, Kenai or MatSu, who are they're very red districts, yet their local governments are purple to blue, right? And you're like, how does that happen? It's because we're not paying attention. We're being distracted by bread and circuses. What's going on the national stage, which we have zero impact in, and we stop paying attention to what's going on locally. And I think the kind of the veil has been lifted. You know, what we're seeing now is more and more, again, dollars from outside interest groups going into now these local races, and they're basically saying the quiet part out loud. This is where it's important. We'll get them at the grassroots. We'll control their communities,
Yeah.
and then we'll get what we want. And I think that's a big part of it. Now, you've been on the school board, and there's been, you know, some serious controversy over and not just here in Alaska. I mean, nationally, there's been controversy at the local levels. You know, probably the most egregious part was in West Virginia when Terry McAuliffe told parents, "You don't get to decide how to, you know, educate your children. We do, because we're the experts." And he immediately was booted from office because people were like, they were waking up. And I think you're seeing that. I think you're seeing an awakening, and that has led to some backlash across the country, including here in the MatSu, where there's been issues that have been raised, whether it's about curriculum and issues of diversity, or the CRT, or of course the library books, the inappropriate books that are being put in children's libraries and things like that. Which, again, by the way, just to let me reiterate, folks, I could not read the contents of these books on the air, because
Right.
I would get an FCC. Every station that's listening us right now would get an FCC fine if I read some of these books on the air. Okay. But we're going to give them to grade school and middle school kids, which is just terrifying. So all these controversies have come up, and you've been right at the heart of this storm for the last couple of years. Tell us about that experience.
Yeah, so actually, I was just elected last November, and then because of redistricting, that's why I need to run again. And wow, in 1 year, we got right after it. We had 5 people were elected last fall, and a real conservative group of us. We decided it is time to get down to business. We started looking at these policies and just basically adding parental rights to most of them. You know, and we have had so much pushback. Um, and it's shocking to me. I can't understand, like I think Oli said too, that it's just common sense. We couldn't even believe we needed to add those things. But every policy that we looked at had some language in it that was definitely put there a few years ago with that real liberal left-leaning type of language. Like libraries would be safe spaces for kids and things like that. So we started just going through the policies and changing changing them to be more common sense type things and adding a little bit of parental rights language into each one of them. And every policy we changed, the pushback has been unbelievable.
Yeah.
Even from policies that just, okay, what you will do is you will let parents know before you talk to them if you're a counselor. Like you can't just walk into a classroom and pull a child out of the classroom and say, I want to pull this kid into a social skills group. Parents need to know that.
Right.
And it's crazy that we're getting pushback on that.
Well, it is. It's astonishing. I mean, the fact that you have to talk about parental rights in a school system at all
Right.
is astonishing. And of course, the first card they pull out when you, in your example of having a counselor pull a kid out of a class and talk to them, but they have to inform. The first card they pull out of that is, oh, but if they're in an abusive home, then that we
Oh,
can't.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
of course, that's a very small slice. It does happen. I'm not saying it
Mhm.
doesn't. I'm not saying it's not horrific. But the fact is that you can't abrogate the rights of all these parents for the actions of a very, very few
Right.
that are there. There are other things in place that can help those situations. But of course, that's immediately where they go to. And that's what we've seen. We've seen the slow but steady divestment of parental rights across over the last 5, 6, 8 years. We've seen that slowly swing to where now they basically have got these kids, trapped in this system, and they've cut the parents almost completely out of the mix. And I mean,
Mhm.
I've had parents come to me and say, I just don't understand what my kids are learning. I don't understand. There's an old saying, don't be surprised when you send your kids to Rome and they return as Romans, right? And
Exactly.
I used to think that only applied to college because, a lot of times college kids would go away with one philosophy and then they'd come back and they were like 180 degrees from the parents. And they'd be like, what happened? Well, you sent him to Rome.
Right.
Now, Rome is the first grade classroom. I mean,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
crazy.
I did not, all the years I was teaching, I did not that wasn't a thing for me. I did my classroom. I taught my students well. I had great relationships with the families, and I had no idea that this was really going on all over. And I really believe that COVID, of course, that whole year where parents were online with kids is what woke people up. It woke me up. Here I was trying to do my job and then seeing all this other stuff on the side. And now it is shocking what is going on in the schools, and that people truly believe what they're doing is right, so it's really shocking to
Yeah.
me to see what's going on.
Yeah, there are very few silver linings that came out of the pandemic. The one of the biggest
That's
ones,
one.
of course, is that people's eyes were completely open to the education industrial complex, the power of the unions and what they were
Yeah,
doing, and the fact that it wasn't all about the children, which is what they
right.
keep telling us, that it's all about the children. And instead, it turned out it was all about power, control, pay, spreading the wealth, social justice in some states like California and things like that. The people eyes, they really were opened in a lot of ways. I want to talk, we got about a minute and a half here. I want to talk for a second about some of these hot button issues. And you're talking about the pushback that you got from the community. Now, MatSu is the reddest district it's the reddest area in the state. And yet, even in the MatSu, you're getting pushback on things like parental notification,
Right.
talking to them about this, talking to them about their kids' gender identity before any of this stuff happens, and the books. Talk to me about the pushback on those things specifically over the last year.
Right. So, one of the biggest ones I think is the counselor policy that we changed. Um, I mean, they feel like they just can't even talk to a student anymore, which is absolutely not true. They just need to let parents know or get their permission to talk to their students. They can't just go, pulling kids and talking to them wherever. Another one that we passed just to keep kids safe was the fact that parents have to be notified before a teacher or any school staff changes their name or pronouns at school. And that one we've had testimony against. They think that we're causing suicides. Kids are unsafe because they can't, express themselves at school like they want without parents knowing. And again, that is truly shocking to me that educators would want that, to leave the parents out of the loop for such an enormous event. So yeah, and the union thing is interesting. I as a teacher for a long time I was a union member because every time I checked, in Idaho it's a right to work state, so I was not a union member. When I came to Alaska and they said I had to be a union member in order to teach, I was shocked. I didn't understand that either. And so I just kind of went along with it, but I kept digging and digging. And finally, I found out that you could opt out of just the political money. You still had to pay, like $600 and some dollars just for your negotiation from the local union. But I got my money back from NEA every year. I didn't agree with the policies. I didn't agree with sending my money to basically all Democrats. Why would any conservative person want to just willingly give your money to be sent away to something you don't believe in? But also, I didn't believe in a lot of the policies like teacher tenure. I didn't believe in seniority and those types of things. I saw a lot of brand new teachers that were doing a much better job than teachers that had been teaching for many years. And then they would be the first ones to leave because of the seniority issue. So, even before all this social stuff the unions are pushing, I did not agree with the teachers union. So I opted out of the union. And I'm kind of surprised that I'm not getting more pushback over that.
This is, there's so many different issues here, and we're going to continue talking about it with Kathy McCollum, candidate for the MatSu Borough School District. We're going to continue our discussions in just a moment. Don't forget, you can join us on Facebook at facebook.com/Michael Duke Show/live if you want to jump into the chat room. It's just me and Kathy and 60 of our closest friends right now hanging out there chatting. Feel free to come out and join us. We'll return in just a moment. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio.
We're broadcasting live through a series of tubes.
Allowing all of these entities to provide streaming stuff going on the internet.
Well, it's kind of hard to explain. Sorry. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
We're in the break right now with Kathy McCollum as we continue on this morning. It's, everything that we're talking about right here, Kathy, everything we're talking about right now just confirms with me that I made the right decision 25 years ago when I decided early on, my wife and I decided that we were going to homeschool all our kids. And we have homeschooled 5 children. My youngest just graduated last year. We homeschooled 5 children, and maybe we weren't the best teachers. Maybe we could have been better and done things differently and in a better way. But every kid is happy, well-adjusted. They can do reading, writing, and arithmetic. They can accurately think. They've got critical thinking skills, and they have a love of learning. All my kids could read at all my kids in high school could read at a college level. All my kids in grade school could read at a high school level. To me, that was the love of that kind of stuff was important. But every time I see some of these things going on, I have just confirmed my decision once more to homeschool. And it's kind of a sad statement because the majority of people are still involved in the main school system, and they're seeing this and sometimes not even knowing what's going on.
No. And, last night at our school board meeting, talking about an enrollment, almost 17% or about 17% of all of our students in the MatSu are in a homeschool program. And that, of course, is mainly just MatSu Central. And we have a Twinley Bridge charter school, homeschool program as well, but it's very small. That's a lot of kids in our district that belong to a homeschool program, and much bigger than it has ever been in the past. So, and that's kids in the Valley that don't go to programs like IDEA and Raven and
Right.
all kinds of other programs.
Yeah, because they're not even counted. in the
No.
MatSu count numbers. So I
Right.
guarantee you, if you can, because I've had conversations. We were an idea charter family. We were in the first batch of we were there when they first started with my
Right.
oldest daughter, who's now 30. But they told me here. I talked to a couple of the people there at IDEA because we've got a long-term relationship with them, and they said um, their enrollment was always steadily growing, but post-pandemic, it spiked hard, like hockey stick hard.
Yeah.
Like going this way and then boom, up like this, something like 35%. And so now you're talking about 3, 4, 5, 6,000 students in the MatSu in the IDEA program alone, not to mention Cyberlinks, not to mention Frontier, not to mention all these other schools that are district schools from other districts. So when you say 17% of the MatSu school district numbers are homeschooled, I guarantee you that there's well over probably a quarter, maybe even 30% of the students in the MatSu completely are probably homeschooled. That's a huge number, and it should be a wake-up call for these folks, but they just don't see it.
Yeah, I agree. I think it should be a wake-up call because the huge increase that has happened. I think it's close to 3,000 kids that are enrolled at MatSu Central now. And in the last couple years, even, it has really expanded, even this school year, which is interesting because, we're fairly back to normal in the public schools as far as, COVID's gone. But I think the social things are getting more and more extreme, and parents are pulling their kids out because of those things.
Right. Well, a
We're
lot of
hearing
them,
that.
a lot of them were told for many years, oh, you shouldn't homeschool because that's way too hard for you. You couldn't handle it. You don't have the education. You don't have the expertise. And then during COVID, they tried it out because, well, they were forced to in many ways.
Right.
And they discovered, well, this wasn't as hard as I was told, right? I mean, they were told the horror stories.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, they're doing better and better. Now, is the count done? Is the student count done now?
Yes.
Okay.
It was through October. So,
Right.
I mean, of course, just yesterday. So we'll get final numbers real soon, but it's pretty regular.
The projections on that were something like, almost a double-digit decrease is what I've heard from various districts as far as enrollment drop. Almost a double-digit drop in enrollment this year is what I'm hearing from many districts around the state.
I think we're staying pretty level. I think we were only down 150 kids.
Okay. All right. Hold on. Let's, and I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but the ding means that we're going to rejoin the radio here. So it's my warning. It's my warning to shut my mouth. All right, here we go. The Michael Duke Show, Common Sense Radio.
The Michael Duke Show. Seriously humorous with a pinch of intellect. Sorry. That is humorous. Here's Michael Dukes.
Come on. It's a pinch. I do have big hands, so but it is kind of funny. Welcome back to the program, The Michael Duke Show, Common Sense Radio. Kathy McCollum is our guest candidate for the MatSu School Board. We're talking about school board issues, which if you'd told me 5 years ago that this would be a hot button thing, I would have told you that you were crazy, but we've seen it. It's going on. Kathy, I was really paying attention to Fairbanks is my former hometown, so I was really paying attention to a lot of things up there. And up there, we saw tens of thousands of dollars in a community of less than 100,000 people, tens of thousands of dollars being poured into it by outside special interests, national teachers unions, Planned Parenthood, different funds and everything else. We're pouring all these independent expenditures and door hangers and all this other kind of stuff. Are you seeing the same thing in the MatSu? Are you seeing a lot of this outside expenditure and independent expenditures and direct contributions to candidates coming from outside groups?
Yes, absolutely. Especially, our two liberal candidates that are opposing Oli and I, they're receiving, of course, thousands of dollars from NEA, PACE, political action committees, other unions. And, Oli's opponent is receiving money from the president of the Anchorage school boards, just a lot of real political activist type people. And Forrest Dunbar even,
Right.
they have a reason that they want a more liberal person put on the school board, and they're really, really pushing hard for Diane Scheib, who is the union president, the former union president.
Oh, no, I heard she's totally
Oh.
conservative. That's what I heard. I heard
Oh,
she's
yeah.
totally conservative.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely not true at all.
I
And of course, we know she fought to keep the schools closed during COVID. She wanted those schools closed, all kinds of issues, the social things. She won't answer any questions about whether, boys should play in girls' sports, boys should use girls' bathrooms. She will not answer those questions. And so if people think she's conservative, they are really being fooled.
Yeah, well,
So,
I mean, she's walking around telling people that.
yes.
That's the ironic thing
Yeah.
is she's telling people that and
Mhm.
then absolutely refusing to answer some of these questions that are important to people. I'm hoping that people see through that. I'm hoping that being that there's a huge amount of special interest behind her that she doesn't, that the special interest doesn't win in this case. But,
Yeah, a
you
lot of money. I think she has close to over $40,000 in her, you know,
yeah.
more
And
recent APOC. So,
she's outraised Ole almost 4-1 at this point.
mhm.
In your race, has it been quite as bad in your race or?
Yeah, well, it's pretty nasty, but I don't know. My opponent is as far left as you can get, and she does not try to hide it. So in that way, I'm I'm in a better situation because the difference is so stark.
Right.
She is a complete supporter of the LGBTQ whatever rights. She's done some really crazy things, like donated to the Trevor Project in people's names who comment on her pages, and then posted even the receipt. Then if people don't know what the Trevor Project is, that is a group that encourages children to have secret conversations with adults. And it is, to encourage the whole transgender thing. It was set up by that guy that was stealing luggage at the airport and worked for the
Right, right.
Biden administration. Yeah.
The cross-dresser
Yes.
for the Biden
Yes.
administration, yeah. Um,
Yes.
and this is insane because, our most, it's cliche, but our most precious resource is our children. Our most
That's right.
precious, as parents, our most precious possession is our children. It's the thing that we do that leaves the most lasting impact on the world for 99.9% of us is our children. And the fact that you have a group of people, and this has been my contention, and you can comment on this if you'd like, but my contention is they're basically showing their hand in that they're suffering from what I like to call the politician's disease, which is that they believe that they know better than you how you should blank. And in this case, it would be raise our children. They believe that they know better than us how to raise our children. And by the way, we're surprised when all this stuff comes out, even though we send our children to spend 6-7 hours a day with these people every day, and we're surprised.
Yeah.
But they have there's an agenda there. There is an agenda to basically undermine parental authority. In many cases, I'm sure there's lots of teachers like you who are good teachers who just
There are good teachers.
but the problem is that they're silent. They don't want to say anything. They don't want to rock the boat. They don't want to, they don't want to do those things or make
Right.
waves or, they feel they feel powerless on this situation. And so those that have this feeling that they know better than you how to raise your children are the ones that are making all the headway.
Right. And that is something that I talk to teachers about a lot because I do know a lot of conservative teachers. And I say you have to start speaking up. You need to start speaking up. Maybe you even need to get together and form a kind of a coalition because out here in the Valley, there are a lot of conservative teachers and they're just quiet. Like you said, they put their heads down, they do their jobs. As a first grade teacher all those years, I actually thought to myself many times that I had students in my classroom that their parent had never even come in to meet me. And that was shocking too.
Right.
When you're with them 6 hours a day and they don't even know who you are.
Right.
And of course, I had lots of parents that I had really great relationships and even became friends with over the years, who made an effort to meet the teacher, know the teacher, and spend time in the classroom even. And that's, if you have your children in public school, you really should think about that. Get
Well,
in there and know that teacher well.
right. And we know that parental involvement is key
Hmm.
to education, right? We knew that in the educational outcomes of students, parental involvement is imperative. But we also know that there's always going to be a slice of the population that essentially utilizes school as a daycare and they don't really pay attention. And as long,
Hmm.
people are people. You're not going to be able to fix all that. You're not going to be able to change the behavior of many of these people, maybe because that's the way they were raised or whatever.
Right.
But the bottom line is that parental involvement is important. But see, I think that these people have leveraged that.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah. Is Michael cutting out or is it me? I'm still here, Michael.
in apathy, essentially, for their own good at this point.
So, Michael, you're cutting out. Um, I see Tawny says it's you, not me. So, okay. So, can you hear me? The chat room can hear me and not Michael? Hi, Jennifer. I'm going to talk to the people in the chat room, I guess. A lot of my friends are there and all of my supporters. I really appreciate you. So here I am. I am happy to be here this morning and see all of my friends there in the chat room. I love listening to Michael, but here we are. So I'll be with you. That this Hi, Terry. I think we're having some technical
There we
difficulties
go. Sorry
today.
about
There we go.
I was just going to say that was a hot brown chocolate mess right there. I don't know
I
exactly.
I think I was ready to run the show.
You were going. You were going. Feel free to keep going at that point. Yeah. No. I don't know what happened, but I apparently lost connection to everything for a hot minute. I was still on the radio, so
Oh, okay, good.
I was filling on the radio, and I took us to commercial break so that we could come back. But yeah, no, that was a mess. It's just one of those things, you know. This happens occasionally, and GCI, you know, God love them, they just can't seem to get their poop in a group here. All right, yeah, yeah, exactly. Anthony says it's your show now, Kathy. Welcome to the Kathy Show. All right. So my question to you was before we were so rudely interrupted by technology was about the basically the opportunism that these people saw in the inaction of parents. And so we'll get back to that here
Right.
in just a moment and we'll view that. Um, both Terry and David wanted you to talk about FERPA. And which of course is the federal requirements for parents to be notified of things that are happening in their kids and that they have to have access to all their children's records and things like that. And I think that's a thing that people are starting to get educated about. So give me some details on that for a second here.
Right. Well, yeah. I have not dug deep into that. I just know that parents have the right and have had the rights to look at curriculum, to be notified if, a lot of that though, the problem is it's opt out of programs, that for sex ed type things. We changed it in our district to opt in, which is another thing that, oh boy, they're acting like it just takes way too much time.
Oh,
They can't get that
oh,
organized.
yeah.
But what happens is in the past when it was opt out, I mean, I have a friend who had an opt out, and her son came home and had gone through 2 days of the class already, even though she signed the opt out. So we're trying to stop that. But yeah, parents do have rights to all records, access to all curriculum,
Right.
and that should be the norm.
Yeah.
So
Well, it's frustrating that more parents, like you said earlier, it's frustrating that more parents aren't involved in what's going on.
mhm.
But at the same time, I don't know how much more outreach. I don't know what the difference would. I don't know how to fix that. Okay.
Right. The
If
parents are starting to realize it, I
Yeah.
think. I think
Yeah.
that, parents are starting to figure out that they do have more rights, or they just, like you said, they just kind of went about their business and didn't really realize how bad it was. And
Well,
now they're
they
realizing it.
they
Right.
trusted the system, right? I mean, they trusted the system. That's
Yeah.
what I think. A lot of parents were too trusting in the system and
Mhm.
believed that everybody had the kids' best interests at heart and that the parents were still in charge and all this kind of stuff. And the COVID and many of these other things that have been going on opened many of their
Yeah.
eyes to the fact that, whoa, this is not as benign as we thought it was. This is not as
Right.
helpful as we thought it was.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
it's crazy. Somebody just said, I want to know what the knickknack is on her windowsill. It looks like a fish.
Oh, yeah, it's a fish from, Mexico. It's one of those little carved wooden fish. Yeah.
Fish, okay. We always get people who are critiquing people's
Oh,
backgrounds.
yeah.
It's hysterical. Had my last guest on in California, and he had a window shade behind him, a curtain that was kind of weird. It was very 70s. It's kind of California-ish,
Yeah.
What, did you steal it from the Brady house? We have a bunch of interior designers here on the program. They love
Right,
to
right,
critique
right.
rooms that
Well,
are
they're
going on.
probably interested in all my knickknacks.
Yeah.
I've got all kinds of crazy things.
Well, that's why I have this blue behind me, because I mean, who
Yeah.
cares what's behind? There's nothing behind me, so it's all good.
Right, right.
All right. Yeah, the opt-in, opt-out thing is amazing. It's amazing that anybody would fight that. Because to me, the fact that they automatically want to opt everybody in to begin with shows me that maybe that they have something to hide. That's a practice that's been banned by the federal government in many businesses. Remember, you used to have all these long distance charges and everything else, and AT&T got banged on this many 25 years ago. They would automatically opt customers in for these charges, and the federal government came back and spanked them because they said this is deceptive practices. This is the same kind of thing. You can't just
It
opt
is.
people in on that.
Right. And it's the same thing as the union. It's the same thing that we're fighting, that's what the Janus decision was all about. But we are still fighting that, where teachers should have to, I feel like teachers should have to opt in every single year.
Yep.
And then I do appreciate, there's the bell, but I appreciate Kevin McCabe's bill that would have teachers have to pay their dues themselves instead of having the school district deduct them from their checks.
I agree. I
Mhm.
agree. Totally. That should be an that should
Mhm.
be an opt-in or that should be an opt-out situation. All right. We're gonna jump back in. Hopefully we don't crash again today. Fingers crossed. I don't know what's
Right.
back with more. Kathy McCollum, our guest, The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. Like, share, follow on everywhere. You could share it from wherever. Let's go. Okay, we're back. Kathy McCollum is our guest. She did rejoin us. It wasn't her; it was me, apparently. So she was going on and on with the chat room and with the people there. They were all loving her. We just lost the radio there for a second, but she's back with us now. Kathy McCollum, final segment of the show for this morning. Kathy, all these issues that we've talked about, the opt-in, the gender stuff, the curriculum, the books, which we really haven't talked about much.
Yeah.
Other than the fact that most of these books couldn't be read on a FCC regulated radio station, which ought to tell you something. If you would be uncomfortable listening to me read it over the airwaves, why would you be comfortable with your children reading it without your supervision or without your consent? I mean, that's my question. But
I think people don't realize the type of books we're actually talking about.
I
had someone tell me that they thought we were banning Charlotte's Web. I mean, This is the mistake that people are leaning towards. They need to look at some of these books, and I think they would be shocked.
Well, I mean, again, yeah, because the verbiage. I mean, they've taken control of the narrative and the fact that they think that you guys are burning books, right? Banning books, burning books. No more To Kill a Mockingbird. No more of Mice and Men. No more of Steinbeck or The End of the Sidewalk or some of these books that have been around for decades. No, we're talking about books. I mean, I read a segment of the book on the air and had to edit myself a little bit as I read it, and it made me uncomfortable to read it on the air. Even editing a few words out and changing some things, and people were flabbergasted. That's the thing you don't understand. And if they want to shovel that stuff towards our children, again, it just shows that they believe that they know better than you, that they have an agenda that they want to. I mean, I don't know how else to put it. They want to corrupt the children into their mindset and their lifestyle.
Right.
Kathy, I want to say this, and because I've come to this conclusion. Like I said previously, school board races were not a big deal. I mean, it was like, to me, it was below the radar of my really attention span. But historically, school boards were supposed to be made up of concerned parents who were trying to organize, drive, and orchestrate and have some control over what was going on in their schools. That's what school boards were supposed to be.
Right.
What has happened over the last 10 or 15 years is that the school boards have been infiltrated, not by parents. Now, some of them may still be parents, but more often than not, they are filled with people who are part of the education industrial complex,
right.
Part of the education industry, right? You've got teachers, union people, administrators. Most of these organizations now seem to be made up primarily in Fairbanks now. In fact, for example, Melissa Burnett is the only just mom on the entire school board. The rest of them are teachers, union members, administrators, or all three, right? That's what's going. So it seems like the chickens, the foxes have gotten control of the hen house, and they're like, no, we're going to control all this because we know better than you, and it all benefits our interests of what we're doing here. Do you think I'm wrong on that, or are you saying?
No, you are so right. And I hear, on our school board in the MatSu right now, we are a very conservative school board, six conservatives and one not conservative, I would say. But we have parents, we have people who homeschool their children. We have a nice variety of people right now. I really am the only educator on the board, and it is kind of nice to have one person that can kind of say, what the administration is telling us is not what's really happening, because I've been out there. So that's a good thing. Right. But these boards that are run by just all union members and all educators, and I've been hearing that here, even people saying in comments on Facebook and such like that more teachers should be on the board, more students should be on the board. And do they not see that would be, the fox running the hen house? And they don't understand that. They really believe that the teachers should be running the school board. They don't understand even what a school board is, I think. So, and it is supposed to be community members and parents and people. It is not, we know best, like you said.
Well, and this push about getting students as voting members on a board, kids. I mean, kids can't go buy cigarettes, alcohol, guns, or get a tattoo before they're of majority age, and yet you want them to be voting on policies that affect all your kids. They don't have the life experience to understand those things, and it's just this push. It's a complete snow job. It's a complete propaganda campaign that they're pushing. We saw the MSEA, their ballot that came out with the vote of no confidence against the school board and the superintendent and everything else, trying to influence the election. The student walkout, again, the useful mindfuls of mush that are out there that just decided, we'll do. I mean, they're being used. The kids are being used in these areas and everything else. But this is an important thing. And I guess I will say this is my position, and you don't have to comment on it if you want. Here's what my argument has been, Kathy. I believe we need to fix the school system in America. This is a nationwide problem. We can't keep producing, we're in the middle of the pack in the, around the world globally on our education. Here in Alaska, we're at the bottom of the pack, 50th percentile, 48th, 49th, 50th percentile. We've got to admit that something's fundamentally broken, and we're not willing to do that. So while I want to fix it, and have this battle, this duke it out cultural battle. I don't want my kids to be in the middle of the battlefield while I'm doing that. So I'm recommending that parents pull their kids out of public schools and do something different: charter school, homeschool, learning pod, teacher share, whatever they need to do while they're fighting this battle. They shouldn't be waging the war while their children are in the middle of all this stuff. And that's just my take on it. I think, and besides that, it has the fringe benefit of then decreasing the amount of money and funds and children available for these people to continue to try and manipulate and benefit from. And that's where I'm at these days.
Right. Yeah, it is a real challenge for us to try to fix this system. I mean, it feels sometimes like it's almost impossible, like you say. And I admire parents that can pull their kids out and use the homeschool. I have many friends that do, and their children are fantastic and well educated and successful. And so it is difficult sitting there on the school board thinking, how can we fix this problem? The whole overall problem, let alone, the money that's spent, and
right.
There's so many issues.
Then let's ask this question: if you're reelected and you continue on school board, what are going to be your priorities moving forward as a school board member in looking at all these issues, seeing that it's not just state, it's not just local, it's national, but all these other issues? What are the things that you're going to focus on moving forward as a school board member? What would be your hit list, so to speak?
Well, my hit list definitely would be getting teachers just back to the teaching of the basic things they need to teach. I have a serious issue with all the huge focus on SEL and social programs and counseling. And I mean, it feels almost like the swap has gone so far to emotional teaching instead of academic teaching. And I know teachers complain about the behavior that they're seeing with students and things like that. But I say focus on the education part of it, get down to business and quit all the fluff stuff, and it can happen, so that's a big part of it. And then really finding out really where all of the money is definitely going. We have a lot of budget issues all the time, although the MatSu does better than most. We need to look at that. I think that we're really heavy administration, like a lot of places all around are. And I think we got heavier during COVID because we had all that COVID relief money coming in. And so we're going to have to start streamlining things like that. So
shouldn't we mandate?
What we're looking at.
Yeah, shouldn't we mandate that a certain percentage of all funds go directly into the classroom? And shouldn't it be the lion's share? Shouldn't it be the majority? Shouldn't it be well over north of 55% of all dollars go directly into the classroom?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. And, there's so many administrative positions around the district. You think, are those people, should they just be in classrooms and we could have lower PTR if we started putting those people back in classrooms instead of just managing all of the stuff that's going on? And teachers just want to teach. They just want to teach in their classroom. And that's what I'm hearing from a lot of my very effective teachers. Like, let us just do our jobs and stop all the other side stuff.
Yeah. Or else we're going to end up like Oregon, where they just basically eliminated the requirement to have proficiency in reading, writing, and arithmetic for graduation. They just eliminated that. Why? Because they couldn't hit the numbers. They couldn't hit it, so they just eliminated it.
We don't care anymore about that because that's not something we can reach. Right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and look at the statistics in the state of Alaska. When Sarah Palin was governor, we had a 73% graduation rate.
Right.
We now have like a 76%, which is better. Don't get me wrong, but that still means that 1 in 4 students fail. They don't graduate. And even those that do graduate, over 60% of them require remedial education to be able to take 100 level classes in college, the most basic classes in college. That's those that even bother to go to college. And so what kind of product are we producing?
That's right. Yeah, in the MatSu, we're definitely doing better than the rest of the state, I think. Like our graduation rate, we just received that information and we were at, I think it was 83%. So, and we've made improvements definitely in that area. And also, our reading math scores are a little higher, still not good. Even the superintendent admits they are not where they need to be. And we're trying really hard to improve those things, but we need to get focused on improving that.
That's where you have to focus. I mean, even
That's right.
83% is essentially 1 in 5 fails, right?
Right.
So, I mean, that we've gotten so far away from the 3 R's, right? The
Mhm.
basics, let alone the triumvirate of logic, rhetoric, and reason, and teaching analytical thinking and the love of learning to kids. That seems to have gone out the window. Where again, as you said, talking about how they feel. We're teaching them about
Right.
how they feel
The
instead of saying,
feelings.
screw your feelings. Let's talk about how to read. Let's talk about
Mhm.
writing. Let's talk about, expressing yourself and analyzing things and having logic and accurate thought. I mean, these are things, again, this is why I homeschooled all my kids, because I could see that
Mhm.
that was going out the window 25 years ago. And
Right.
now here we are today.
Right.
Last 3 minutes here, Kathy, give us the biggest differences between you and your opponent. And then we'll do a summation there at the end. So give me the biggest, if people wanted to vote for, here's the biggest differences between me and my opponent. Give us 2 or 3, and then we'll move on to the summation.
Okay, well, my opponent definitely is a supporter of LGBTQ rights, very focused on that issue, in fact. And I'm a conservative, fiscal responsible. I believe in just getting back to the basics of education. I would like to focus on reading, math, writing, history, and move along where our students need to be. These programs that you talk about that people use in homeschool, there is no reason they can't be used in public schools as well. Like, I was a serious fan of Saxon Math, Spalding Phonics, and we always want the fancier stuff, and all it does is frustrate teachers actually when they keep switching from program to program. But my opponent is very young. She doesn't have much life experience other than kind of an activist, I guess, is what I'd say.
She
So,
has a cause, and that's what she's pushing
right,
is the cause, not the education of children. It's
exactly.
it's the fulfillment or the furtherance of a philosophy rather than what the kids are doing.
Yes.
Which is, again, it's frustrating. And I continually ask myself, why would a parent continue to allow their children to be subjected to that?
Mhm.
Um, while it is what it is, why wouldn't you sacrifice whatever it took to bring your kids home or to another situation that
Right.
they could get properly educated? I mean, this is, again, something that's going to affect them their whole life. No wonder kids are so messed up in so many ways these days. It's astonishing.
Right.
All
And there
right.
are some really great charter schools, I will say that too. There's a few really great charter schools in the valley that have huge waiting lists, which I'd
Yeah.
like to see.
That
Um,
that proves something right there. The
that's
fact that
right.
they have huge waiting lists should say something. That's a
That's
supply
right.
and demand thing. We should be doing more of that. Charters,
Exactly.
again, learning pods, teacher. I'm surprised more of these teachers just don't retire and then share themselves out as a teacher share program.
Exactly.
You could make a lot of money as a teacher doing that in your spare time if you invested a little bit in your own personal classroom. All right,
Yep.
less than 60 seconds. Kathy McCollum, how do folks find out about you? Where do they go? What do they need to do? How do they support you? Quickly.
Well, thank you. And I see that somebody posted, you did, kathyforschoolboard.com is my webpage. And I encourage anybody to reach out to me. I see that you had a problem reaching me through my website, and I've had a lot of issues with that. So people just can reach me at my school board email as well. It's on the MatSu School Board website. And I love to hear from people. I want to know what people think. I have had many conversations with your chat room followers, so I
Okay.
appreciate that.
Well,
And
good.
I
Well,
also have been a long time listener, so
well, thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you for coming in. Hold the
yes.
line. Folks, we're out
Okay.
of time for today. Tomorrow's Firearms Friday, the Michael Duke Show. All right. I give you the final bite. You know how this works. If you watch the show, you know
Yeah.
how this works. This is the final bite at the apple. Anything I didn't
Right.
cover, any topics I didn't hit on, any hot buttons, you want to rant for 2 minutes, whatever it is, I give you the
Well,
floor.
I just appreciate being on the show this morning. It was fun, and I love to talk. I could talk for a whole show about the teachers union, of course, because that's kind of been a hot button issue for me. Even while I was teaching, I worked really hard to help other people realize how to opt out of the union and realize that the benefits of the union weren't there. I mean, if you want to just teach and do your job, you don't need to pay $1,300 to a club.
Right.
that fights against what you believe, basically.
Right.
So they scare teachers. They make teachers believe that they'll have no liability insurance if they don't belong to the teachers union. And of course, that scares a lot of brand new teachers. So
Yeah.
teachers
Well,
need support to realize they don't need that to be a good teacher. So
I think, Kathy, you could be held up as an example. As I said before, I am sure that there are many great teachers in every school district.
right.
I mean, I'm sure I try never to vilify the teachers in a lot of these cases, because there are bad teachers, I'm sure, but I'm sure that there's a lot of good teachers. The problem is, much like my example is the problem in law enforcement, there's plenty of great cops. They just don't talk about the bad cops, right? The same kind of thing in the school system. If they don't stand up and take a stance on this and say, no, we need to be teaching them how to read, how to write, how to do math. That's the important part. If they don't stand up, they're going to continue to get steamrolled. I know it's scary. I know you're talking about careers. I know that, that's a challenge, but at some point you got to put up or shut up.
That's right. And teachers have a hard time doing that. They're kind of rule followers themselves, typically. I was kind of a rebel.
Well, if you know me, you know that I don't follow the rules hardly at all, because I'm contrary in that respect. But I think that is probably the best thing, is that you've got to get, not only do you have to get parental involvement, which is happening, I think, more and more, like you said, people are waking up, but I think the teachers themselves, especially the good ones that just want to teach, that just want to help the kids, that are not about all this other philosophy and social engineering and all this other stuff, especially for who's teaching social engineering stuff, gender identity and all this stuff to kids who are, 5 to 10, 12, 13 years old. I mean, teach these the basics. But see, they know, again, this seems more insidious. I mean, it really kind of is more insidious, is that they know that if they can get them that young, that then they can have them for the rest of their school career in their lives. And that's
confusing kids.
It's horrific. It's absolutely horrific. So hopefully by your example, more teachers will stand up, more parents will stand up. And I just think of kind of the MatSu as the kind of the last bastion of freedom here in the state. I just watched Fairbanks School Board go all blue.
Oh, I was so disappointed in that.
And even down in the Kenai, which is very red, same kind of thing. Still that trend towards the purple blue side. We've got to wake up.
Outside money, though.
Oh yeah, we got to stop being the silent majority.
Right.
That's the thing. We got to stop being the silent majority. We need to be silent no more. Essentially, is what needs to happen. Well, I wish you the best of luck.
Thank you.
Is it district? This is something I should ask, actually. School boards, are they districted right around the district?
Yes. I'm District 3. I should have said that. I am District 3, which is kind of the Fairview Loop and out onto the Parks Highway, the Ranch neighborhood. It's a big district, as they all are in the valley here. But District 3.
Yeah.
So.
Well, you have my vote.
Thank you.
We need more people out there. I believe that I'm part of Fairview Loop KGB out towards the park.
Oh, awesome! Great.
So you have my vote, and we hope that you continue on. It's all we can say. Kathy McCollum, thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks. I'd love to come back sometime too.
Well, we'd love to have you back. If you ever get anything hot button, feel free. If you want to call us. If you want to call us after the election and explain to the whole student representative.
Oh, that sounds great. Yeah.
We could do that as well.
Yeah, we didn't really even talk about that walkout.
Yeah, no. Well, again.
I heard you yesterday, though. That was excellent.
I lost my mind a little bit. All right.
I loved it.
Thank you, Kathy. I'll talk to you again.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right, folks. That means we are out of time. Tomorrow on the program, Jacob Sullum from Reason Magazine joins us. We're going to be talking about St. Benitez. That's Judge Benitez in California, and how his decision may stand even against the Ninth Circuit en banc panel. It should be an interesting discussion. Plus Willie Waffle and more. That's Firearms Friday tomorrow. Thank you, my friends. We'll see you. Have a great day.
We've shed our terrestrial radio skin, and now we are slimy lizard internet people. It's the Michael Duke Show.